Hello, everybody. It's Joe and Zach, Pittsburgh Realtors, and we're here today with Joe Lowers, professional comedian, owner of the World Series of Comedy, a Pittsburgh native. He's been traveling around the country over the last 27 years or so as a comedian. Grew up here in Pittsburgh, got his start here, and him and I have been friends for a long time. And wanted to have a chance to talk to him today about the World Series of Comedy and what he's been doing, maybe ask him some questions about being a comedian and see what that's like. I think he can probably shed some insight into things you might not know about comedians. And so we appreciate you being here today. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for having me, guys. You guys are wonderful. Such a beautiful.
Joking already.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about.
Does Zach get to introduce himself or no?
What's that?
Does Zach get to introduce himself or?
I'm eye candy. I just sit here.
Yeah, you're like Ed McMahon or whatever.
I'm a real
Exactly.
a rose between two thorns.
All right, I'm going to turn my phone off here. It just chirped. So that's good though. It chirped, meaning I just got a registration for the World Series of Comedy.
All right, that's a perfect segue into my question. Tell us about the World Series of Comedy.
Well, this is our 12th year of kind of officially, but we actually did it 2 years here in Pittsburgh. I started comedy about 27 years ago, I think, at the Funny Bone here in Pittsburgh. And I worked there for a lot of years and then started on the road as a comic, traveling all over the country and stuff. And then I would come back to the Funny Bone and say to the owner, man, this guy just opened up for me. He's really funny, or this comic. And the owner, who was a nice guy, but would always be like, I was like, I love comedy. I really wanted to help comics. So I asked him what his slowest month was. And I said, give me the entire month and give me your entire budget and hire some of the comics at the end of the month and I'll pack the club. And I did it and it worked really well. And we gave away $10,000 and 8 weeks of work, which was really cool for the comics. And then the next year I moved to Las Vegas so I could do my own show in Las Vegas. And I was out there for 15 years. But when I moved out there the following year, he had me do it again because it was so good. And then I'm like, I live in Vegas. I'm trying to do my show. I can't do this anymore. So I stopped doing it for several years. I'm not even like 3 or 4 or 5 years, but I love the idea. I kept getting it out, kind of kept reworking it. And we ended up, because I'm like, I don't have $10,000 to give. What could I give that the comics would want? And I got a hold of all the club owners that I had worked for throughout the years. And I asked them if they'd give me weeks of work, feature work, which is the middle act. When you come to a comedy show, you have the host. The middle act is called the feature or the middle, and then the headliner. So, and I knew that most of these clubs wouldn't give me headline work because they don't know who the comics are. They don't know whether they could trust that they're going to be funny or not. So I knew they'd give me feature work. So ended up getting 37 weeks of work the first year, and 300 some comics registered, and 101 of them, about 130 some came out to Vegas and performed in the first main event in 2010. And it really went well. And then I did it again the next year. And the second year was probably my most nerve-wracking year because I wasn't sure if what I had done I had just gotten lucky. But it worked. And we added, other than just coming to the Vegas for the main event, we added a bunch of satellites. And that's kind of where we're at now. We do 12 satellites around the country, and all leading up to the main event that happens every September, except last year. Last year was a little bit of a wrench in the system.
That's awesome. I like I told Joe, I was excited to have you on because I've been a pretty big fan of stand-up comedy for.
Yeah, how long, Zach? Yeah. I've been doing comedy longer than you've been a fan of comedy.
That's not my fault, though. I'm just. I started early junior high.
You could have been born sooner, Zach.
Talk to my parents about it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you've had this question a million times. When or what was it that made you realize you? And I think the answer that I usually hear is that comedy called you instead of you going to comedy. What was the catalyst for you?
Uh, well, I mean, I was always bad in school and carrying on, and I didn't realize comedy was a job. Like it's funny, like you say we're joking around and saying you're a fan for 15 years, but you were born into an era where like you understood that like I didn't. I remember seeing Steve Martin on TV on Johnny Carson, watching him with my dad, and my dad and I were laughing so hard, and I didn't understand. Like I knew what he was like. He was up there just doing silly things, but I'm like, is this? Why is he doing it? Like, is that a job? Like my dad was a machinist. My dad got up every day and went and ran a machine and stuff. And I'm like, can you just do that? Like because I don't want to do what my dad's doing. He's working really hard, and that looks stupid. Like that's what I want to do. So, but I never pursued it until I went to art school here in Pittsburgh. I just didn't realize it was something I could do, and then I went. I started a vending company here in Pittsburgh, and that grew pretty large. And one of my accounts was one of the guys had gotten a dare to go do it on stage. So I went down with my wife. I remember watching the show going, I can make faces and be funnier than some of these guys. I realized it's not that easy now after you do it, but I did it. And it's a drug that is like, I've never done any drugs and I don't drink. So I don't know, I can't compare it to anything, but I know that the high that you get off of stage is incredible. And once I hit it, everything changed. I sold my half the vending company. I started doing comedy. I took everything I knew in business and put it into this. And it's even when it's the worst possible thing that could happen to you on stage and people are hating you, it's still better than anything else.
I've heard people say that if they stopped getting paid to do stand-up, they would still do it.
Well, I've done my exact same show for nothing, and then the next night, $1,200.
Yeah,
same thing.
I don't think we would do this if we didn't get paid.
Right. Yeah, I definitely.
Oh wait a minute! You guys are getting paid for this?
Well, not for this particularly.
I don't know.
Indirectly.
There's been many times that I've left a show and been in my car and went, "Oh man, I forgot to get paid." Nothing else do I do that with.
No, I can't do that.
Yeah, it's well, comedy. If I tell for the World Series of Comedy, I love it. And when you've been in any business for a long time, people get bitter and upset about stuff. I love the World Series of Comedy because I'm around a lot of young, hungry, new comics that are just very, very excited to be part of it. And I feed off that energy. But I tell comics all the time, I'm like, if you're getting in this business for the money, quit. When I started 27 years ago, a feature middle got paid $100. 27 years later, they get paid $100. When I'd leave my house with $300 in my pocket, and I would leave for 2 weeks driving all over the country. And if I came home with 200, that was a good deal. When I sold my vending company, I had 2 brand new vehicles, and that's how I got work as a comic, because I was smart and I offered to drive comics all over the country. At one point, the headliner was driving my car and hit a deer in North Carolina. So we did about $1,500 damage on the car. The following week, we took my other vehicle. We were driving to Chicago and I hit black ice right outside of Chicago, spun around and did about $1,500 damage on my other car. So in a matter of a week and a half, I had done $3,000 damage on 2 cars. I was making $200. And I said to my wife, I said, this is the time for you to tell me to quit. And she's like, what else are you going to do? And she didn't mean it that I had no other skills, because she knows I ran a business and I have a degree in advertising and stuff. Once you start doing it, I tell comics all the time, I'm like, make sure you have a really understanding wife or a partner or no one, because it's a tough life. It's great. It's fun though, you know.
Right. I think one of the things I was thinking as you were saying that was, when we interview business owners of any kind, a lot of them have similar kind of stories, not, apples to apples, but, moments of doubt and realizing once they get into it, it's not nearly what they thought it was going to be, that you have to be, when you run your own business, you have to be a salesman, you have to be a manager, you have to be a performer, you have to wear a lot of different hats when you're starting off and learning all these different skills. And, like you said, there's no promise or guarantee of success. You just have to have faith in yourself that it's going to work out and keep grinding away at it. And eventually you start to see some success, but it takes a while. And I think, we were talking to our last interview about, the failure rate.
I don't want to be compared to other interviews. No, I'm
All right.
Figure out a different way to say this. No, I'm just kidding.
So far, it's nothing like any of the other ones.
Nothing like any of the other
Right on track.
But the business end of it is, I think a lot of people think, oh, it'd be really fun to be a comedian. You just, like you said earlier, you just go up on stage, you act silly, you make some funny faces, and that's a part of it. And that's the part that hooks you in. But there's a whole other part of it, which is the business aspect of making a living out of it.
Yeah, I tell the comics, well, I tell anybody who act, like, I say, performing on stage, that's not my job. That's
Right.
the payoff. Getting to perform on stage, that's the job. That's the work. That's kind of what the World Series hopes to do. We hope that the winner of the World Series each year wins 50 weeks of, anywhere between 50 and 30 weeks of work. And my goal behind that is to hopefully let the comic just be a comic for a year and not have to do all the work that it takes to get on stage, because performing is the payoff. That's once you're up on stage, that's where it's fun and you get to do it. But all the work that goes in to, I said, imagine, and this is a fear that a lot of people have. Imagine applying for a job. You lost your job and you have to apply for a job, which a lot of people are going through right now. And it's a big fear of a lot of people. Imagine having to apply for a job 50 times a year, because that's what a comic's job is. We apply to one club over and over again, try to get them to watch our video, try to make the phone calls, call and pretty much beg them to hire you. Once you get that 1 week, you still have 50 some, whatever it is, weeks.
51 more.
Thank you.
You said you weren't good in school. It's 52 weeks a year.
But I thought it was something like that. Can we cut that out?
Yeah.
No way.
I'll have the editor.
No way. Yeah, no way. Yeah, no, I knew it was 51. I knew it was as many states as there are.
Well, actually, realtors know exactly what you're talking about. I heard early in my career,
you guys are doing the same thing.
that, the one guy who was kind of my mentor said, you wake up every day unemployed and you got to go find a job. And very similar, if you can do nothing as a realtor and never get any sales, and nobody's really going to say a whole lot to you. You don't have.
There's a lot of similarities between comics, and the only thing that I think is comics put their picture on their business card, and I think that's important. But I don't think it's important for realtors. I'm always, every time I find a realtor in the audience, I'm like, do you have your business picture in your business card? And they're like, yeah. I go, has it ever gotten you a sell? Like they're like, I don't think I'm going to buy this house. Oh man, this guy looks good. I like his blue shirt. I'm going to buy a house off this guy.
Well, maybe not for Zach and I, but some of the women.
I think it would hurt you, Joe.
Some women in our industry have some pretty attractive business card photos.
Yeah,
I think that may drive some business their way.
Yeah, we have to do our advertising on the internet with videos with comedians.
You probably should just blur out your faces for these interviews.
Probably, maybe not a bad idea.
Another job for the other.
Maybe we should continue to wear our masks even though COVID is over.
It's over. Yeah, it's over. Everything's ended.
Speaking of COVID, what did you think because I listen to a lot of stand-up comedian podcasts, and they all had a different opinion on these drive-through or outdoor comedy shows. Some were super against it, like that's not how the art form should be. Some people just say, yeah, I'm a comedian, I got to do what I got to do. Where did you fall on that spectrum?
I didn't do anything. I judged it online. So, I mean, I did a lot of stuff for the World Series. We have a voting app called zippyvote.com, and I was just in the process of getting the whole thing built and everything and getting it ready to start to use for live entertainment other than my own. And then COVID hit, and it's kind of just been sitting there. But during that time, we added a video element to it where we are now using it. And for COVID was terrible, and but I think that everybody should look at. I tried to look at what I can get out of it. I had a lot of people say, "Man, you should just cancel your festival." And I'm like, "That's my business. I can't just cancel my business for the year." So I kept working, and somehow we were able to pull off the main event live in Las Vegas in November of last year. But during that time, we took all our 12 live satellites and turned them into online satellites. And we, instead of having it like a Zoom show, we played videos of the comics, of them on stage, and then had people vote that way. That's what I like. I have 3 hosts this year. One of my hosts was doing shows out of the back of his truck. I think it's great. He was getting stage time. He was comfortable doing it. One of my hosts lives in LA. He was doing a ton of Zoom shows. And I wasn't a fan of them, but when we started doing our shows where he's kind of hosting these online shows, he was super comfortable just talking to a computer monitor as we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. And he was really good. So I see benefits for everybody. David Kay, who is a longtime comedian here in Pittsburgh, who owns Slapsticks Comedy Club, and I'll let him know he might want to jump on here. He did some incredible things while this was going on, and was doing shows out in his office through a window, and people were watching in their cars and blinking their headlights and stuff. And he didn't stop. He didn't give up, because that's his business. That's what he does. So I don't fault anybody for doing whatever they did. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody has a right, though, to say that's not comedy or they shouldn't do it, because if you're comfortable doing it and you want to have fun doing it, then do it. And I think you can get something out of it. It's definitely changed the way we're doing business. Now we've added 4 online satellites, something we've never had before this year.
The last year has made you do different things, and now some of that is like beneficial to bring into the post-COVID life. But yeah, if you're funny, you're funny. It doesn't matter if you're doing it to inside the room at the Improv or a parking lot with people honking their horns.
Yeah, it's definitely has a different feel. And I think sometimes when you've been doing it as long as I have, there's times I wish, and I'm sure you guys will understand this too, but there's times I wish I didn't understand everything or know everything that I know. Because there's shows I would take or do. But now I'm like, oh, that's going to be really bad. Like, yeah, I mean, you younger comics are like, oh yeah, I'll go to this bar and stand in the middle of a redneck bar and whatever, and I'm like, I did that. I've had stuff thrown at me. I've driven 12 hours and performed on a milk crate. I've gotten punched. I've had to be walked to my room because people were gonna beat me up. I did all that. Now I'm like, I'll stay in the controlled area.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we were going to ask you what's your most memorable experience, but I think you just rattled off 3 or 4 right there.
Well, I mean, I can give you a quick story. The one that happened, we were in, I was in Elko, Nevada, and I did a show on Friday night with 2 other comics, and it went really well. And we were sitting in the restaurant the next day eating, and the server comes by, and I said hello, and she's like, I said, how you doing? And she looked upset, and she's like, oh, I'm not doing that good. And I go, oh, I'm sorry. And she's like, yeah, one of our regulars last night died after the show. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And she goes, yeah, the FBI's here. And I'm like, oh, he didn't just die. Like the FBI doesn't come for just like, oh. So she's like, yeah, we're going to do a candlelight vigil in the room tonight while you're performing. And I'm like, what? And so she walks away, and the other comics go, what do we do with that? And I go, I have no idea. So that night, the room is set up. You're on stage. There's about 100 people in front of you. And then there's like a horseshoe kind of bar. And over here, there's about 25, 30 people weeping and crying with candles. And these people here have no idea. So I tell the opening acts, I'm like, just don't pay attention to that. Do your stuff for the people that are here. Plow through it. And I'm standing in the back while the feature's on stage. And I was the headliner of the show. And I'm standing in the back and with the GM, and this guy walks up while the other comics on stage and says, before the headliner goes on stage, I'd like to go up and make an announcement. And I go, hey, I know what happened. I feel terrible. That's really going to be hard for me to follow. I said, can I just bring you up at the end? And let me do my thing, and then I'll bring you up and introduce you and let you tell the audience what's going on. And the guy goes, and storms off. He doesn't say anything, he storms off. I turn to the GM, I go, there's going to be a problem. And I hit the stage, and they start throwing things at me. My show's really energetic, and I'm really interactive with the crowd. So I was able to get the crowd within a couple minutes to like me. And they start throwing and yelling and swearing at me and things like that. So I rip them apart. And then I tell them to go take their candles and go mourn someplace else. And then I say to the audience, I go, it's them or me. What do you want? And the audience tells them all to get out. And they bring in security and march them out. And then after the show, the security comes up to me and says, we need to walk you to your room. They're all in the lobby. And they want to get you.
They want to mourn another person.
Yeah. This was so old that I have this show on VHS somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is old.
Yeah, I was recording it on a VHS, but I do have it. I call it the Death Show, but it was pretty crazy.
So you said you weren't good at school when you were younger. What were some of your go-to? I assume you were a class clown type of kid.
Oh yeah.
What were your go-tos?
I don't know if I had any go-to. I'm dyslexic. I don't have a problem saying that. I think that it's I'd love to help more dyslexic kids understand what they can do and grow from it. I didn't know that when I was in school, so I knew that if I listened, I could learn. So I did okay in classes, but as soon as something would start to go bad, rather than get embarrassed for not being able to read as quickly as Trina Seaburn.
Not to mention any names.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Bleep that out.
Yeah, no, she was just a smart girl, and I would start to read, and then all of a sudden, Trina, can you finish this? And it's like, duh. So I would be bad. I would be bad. I was just always carrying on. Rowdy.
Do you think that the dyslexia in a way is what
100%
towards comedy?
100% it's the reason I'm a comic, and it's the reason I have and do everything that I have. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's a pain in the butt. And when I'm typing stuff and people are, I misspell words constantly. And if I would have let that hold me back, I wouldn't have my business. So I just tell people, if you don't like a misspelled email from me, then I guess we can't do business. I check and I do what I can, but sometimes you just got to get stuff done. And I used to do advertising for B94, the radio station. And I did artwork years ago And I showed it to my wife, and she goes, "Did you got this to fix, right?" And I'm like, "No, I just did it." And she's like, "No, you got it to fix." I was like, "Oh, there was stuff spelled wrong and I didn't know it. Like, I didn't see it." So I think as a defense mechanism, dyslexia is something that kids that they never want to admit because it makes you feel like you're dumb when you're not. And you learn you just learn a different way. I learned visually, so I was always good at history and maps and things like that because you see them. So I learned that way. But I think in school, whenever things would start to, if there was any chance that I was going to look stupid, then I would rather go to the office.
Just do something to get in trouble to
Yeah, I would
change
do.
something.
Yeah, and then I'd be like talked about as the guy who did this crazy stuff at school.
Mhm.
So that's I think that's. But I mean, I was always the class clown, so I kind of always made the joke that I really didn't have anywhere else to go but comedy.
Right.
It worked out. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time.
So with the World Series of Comedy being successful and clearly you're rising to the top of your profession, what do you plan to do with your 15 minutes of fame when they arrive?
I think they already did. What do I plan to do? I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But in this crazy world, that 1 minute you could be just doing a interview for a realtor podcast, and the next minute you're on something much smaller.
Much smaller than this.
So
I don't know. I mean, there's some comics that would wonder. They say, I don't know if I'm successful or I'm trying to become successful. I feel like I have been. I've done what I wanted to do for the last 27 years. I had my own comedy show in Las Vegas for 12 years. I got up every day, drove to a showroom, did a show 5 nights a week in front of audiences from all around the country and all around the world. I performed in 47 states, I think, Hong Kong and Canada, all over Canada, flew to Hong Kong, did shows. I'm happy with where I'm at. Would I like to be on TV or be bigger than I am or something like that? Yeah, but the only reason is I would like that to help grow the World Series to help other comics. That's where I'm at. I get a huge rush when I get to help a comic get work and be seen and things like that. So that's what the World Series is. And I think I hope it's gonna keep growing. I'm adding other elements to it. We're doing the online shows, and anybody here who's watching, if they want to watch any shows, they can just go to WSOCtickets.com, and we have all our shows listed on there, and every one of them you can stream. So if you're sitting at home, you don't want to go watch a show, you can stream one of our shows. And if you stream it, we have, you go to the ticket thing and you can pay whatever you want by donation. So if you don't have any money or you're hurting for money and you still want to watch some comedy or whatever, you can just choose the free one. We have some funny things on there. Like if you choose the free one, then it's like, oh, I guess you don't want to help us pay our rent and stuff like that. But it's fun. It's a comedy.
and they can vote on the comedians to determine who the winner is going to be at the end of the weekend.
So if they watch it live, they can watch all the streams anytime. I think they can get the link. They can watch old ones and stuff like that. But if they watch it live while it's happening, I leave next week for Laughs Unlimited in Sacramento, California. So we'll be doing shows Wednesday through Saturday there live. So anybody who wants to watch them could judge those ones. And then we go from Sacramento, we're going to Minnesota, then to Boston, then to Arizona, Colorado, Florida. Yeah, so that's the remainder of our schedule.
I don't think I didn't know how much you focused on helping the other comics in the World Series. I thought it was just a cool setup that you had that was just a cool idea for like a competition type show, but I didn't realize it went so much deeper than that.
The contest is more for the audiences
Mhm.
and a way to draw or bring something. It's funny when I have a meeting with the comics, the first thing I say is contests suck. And they're like, what? You run one of the largest ones in the country. And I go, that's not what this is about. And that's not why you should register for this festival. You should be registering for the net. And you guys are in this business, it's all networking. You guys have, both of you guys have gone to some dinner or some thing that you didn't want to because you needed to network and you knew that there was
Candlelight
going to be,
vigil.
yeah, candlelight vigils. My wife and I wanted to open up a candlelight vigil store in Las Vegas because they had one every day. It seemed like, I mean, what a business, what a great business that is. So you can sell the candles, the cardboard, like the little things, so that the wax doesn't get on your hand.
Right.
It's just the business is endless. And then you could sell the crosses that people put along the highway. So this is getting morbid and dark. So, but there's a lot of the
Tragedy plus
candlelight.
time equals comedy.
Yeah. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about opening your own club? Is that a thing that has ever crossed your
I
mind?
kind of had my own showroom in Vegas that I ran. I've thought about it. I was thinking about it kind of heavy when I moved back here to Pittsburgh. Kind of glad I didn't pursue it more because I would have really run into the crapper with the COVID. That would have been rough. I get the itch to do it all the time. It's a money thing. I'm sure if I had enough money to not worry about opening up a club because it's gonna take a lot to do that, I probably would. I think Pittsburgh could use another A-room club. There's different levels of clubs, like the Improvs are an A-room where they're kind of, that's what they do. They only do comedy. They're there all week. The Funny Bone was an A-room club. It's gone. I think Pittsburgh could have another club.
That's the reason I asked, yeah, because the Improv is pretty much the only place other than big theaters, that have big names. That's, as a fan, that's what I've always thought is, once the Funny Bone went, it felt like there wasn't enough around here.
Correct. I think the city could hold it and keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
Whether the right person comes in and does it or not, I'd like to see somebody from Pittsburgh do it.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows?
Another thing I've always heard from the podcast that I listen to is comedians will say, "Oh, that club is, Caroline's great owner, the Comedy Store." What makes to me, I'm not a comedian, so I don't really understand, but what makes a comedy club better than other ones? I know the physical attributes of the room are a big aspect, how many seats, how low the ceiling is, all that stuff. But what does an owner do besides pay you? What makes a good one versus a bad one?
Wow. There's I would say all the clubs that we deal with, I would consider great clubs with great owners. And the reason I deal with them is because of that. I don't want to deal with ones that are going to drive me nuts. So it's a lot of taking care of the business side of it. And like Laughs Unlimited that we're going to next week, Jen, the owner, is incredible. She's fun to hang out with. She cares about the room. She just, right before COVID, she just closed her club for a month and put in $30,000 or something like that to redo the whole room. And then COVID hit. And then she was doing shows in the parking lot outside in California for months. And when she came to the main event, her and I talked about how to survive. But when you go to the club that if, as a comedian, when you're on stage, if somebody gets drunk and is out of control heckling, and with comedy being so big anymore, people think that it's their job to heckle, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Your job's to be an audience and watch. My show, I do a lot of interacting with the crowd and talk to them. But there's a lot of comics that don't want that. And some clubs will go, well, I'm making money off the food, I'm making money off the drinks, I don't want to throw that guy out. Well, that the rest of the people at the show then go, I'm not going to come back because the show's not policed well, it's not taken care of well. And then you, as a comic, show up and there's not a lot of people in the audience, or it's not, or there's people yelling out and the club owner doesn't care because he's making money off drinks. To me, running the business is taking care of the comic, and everything else will be good. So when you show up at any one of these clubs that we're going to, they all care about the comic, which they still care about their business, but they know that the comic is what drives their business. It's a comedy club. So if the comic on stage isn't having a good experience, then the audience overall isn't going to have a good experience. And then in the long run, now that club could be in a town where there's no other competition, so they may survive for many, many, many years, just letting a bunch of people come in and be rowdy, bad audiences. And as a comic, you start to go, I don't want to go to that club. But the other ones, like we just went to the Punchline. That was our first satellite in Atlanta. That club was great. Like it was in the back of a diner, kind of beat up. I always say a club should be really immaculate, like really high end, really nice, or a piece of crap. Like the carpet should be smelly, and when you're walking across, your feet should be sticking to it. And you want the audience. There's all kinds of elements that go into putting a comedy show together that makes a club great for a comic. You want the audience. I want the audience so close that they fear I'm going to kick them at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
I want that they should be uncomfortable. You should have the room so cold that they're sitting there chilled. As soon as the audience gets comfortable, they feel comfortable to start yelling or falling asleep because it's too warm or whatever. So if you're ever sitting in a show and you're rubbing against somebody that you don't know, that's why COVID has made it really hard. They've separated audiences, and a lot of comics are doing really well with it, and some are not, because the audience's laughter is contagious. And when you're sitting next to somebody, it happens. And when it's spread out, sometimes there's somebody laughing over here and you're just like, what's going on? Why are they laughing like a nut? Instead of getting involved in that.
Yeah. It definitely is a more intimate setting. Does seem to, the crowd reacts better to that than when you're spread way out. I mean, that's in any kind of crowd. Whenever it's busy and people are a little tighter in and it feels full, you're going to get a better audience reaction, I think, in most cases.
Yeah, so I think that's what makes a difference in some clubs. Some clubs are more customer driven, and some are more comic driven. And the ones that are, but I wouldn't say, I think the ones that are more comic driven, they also care about their customers. They're just a good business. They know how to take care of every element, and each thing needs to be treated as, you treat the audience one way, you treat the comic one way, you treat your guy who brings your food another way, and hopefully they all work together and make a show. And when you, as a comic, you come back to a club and a lot of the staff is still the same, that always tells me something. Like, I know when I walk into Laughs Unlimited next week, there'll be 3 or 4 of the 5, 6 of the servers that have been there every single time I've gone in the last 5 years. And they'll be saying smart things to me, and I'll be saying smart things to them, and we're going to have a fun week with everybody.
Right. So if they did a movie about your comedy career,
wow,
and the World Series of Comedy, who would play you in the movie?
You, Joe.
No, I mean a famous actor, not me.
That could possibly be. That's the question I'm going to roll my eyes at.
We were thinking Jim Belushi, maybe. Somebody like that.
Oh, is he still alive? Oh yeah,
he's actually a very successful weed farmer now.
A weed? Yeah.
Yeah,
Like grows marijuana?
he's got,
Oh,
it's legal out there.
I got
Yeah,
some weeds in the backyard.
marijuana farm.
Well, we might not be able to pry him away from his marijuana farm.
I
to
think
do
he's
that.
Yeah.
doing pretty good.
Well, my first question is, why can't I play me?
You could. That I was leaving it open for you to answer the question that way. Like,
I think I would like to play me.
all right.
And then, or a woman. No, I don't know.
I don't have any guesses.
I'm so bad with famous people. I don't know anybody's famous people's names. I don't know what they look like. I'm really bad with it. During our weekly meeting with all the guys, they brought up Shakira, and I'm like, I wouldn't know who that was if she walked into a room. And they're like, you're kidding, right? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't pay. Like, I would probably go, oh, she's very good looking or whatever, but I wouldn't know who it is.
Are you that way with comedians, or is that separate, separate world where you know all the comedians, famous and not?
I don't.
No,
I don't know all the famous comedians. I
mean, not personally, but
no, correct. I know. Yeah, I don't watch a lot. I watch about 500 videos a year of comics, but those are the ones who register for the festival. I don't watch any other comedy. There are some famous comics that I know of that I enjoy their show, but yeah, I'm not one who remembers their name. Like, I'm really good with faces, but then I'll be like, I don't know what their name is or what they did.
if you had to pick a favorite, who's your favorite of
Comic
all time? Yeah,
Steve Martin. Yeah, he's why I'm doing this, because I saw him doing it.
So he's been your favorite since day one, inspiration, favorite, all that.
Yeah, and I just went to Verizon, little plug. You should get them to pay for that, to buy a hotspot. And I got to talking the guy that's selling me the hotspot is talking about comedy, and he asked me that same question, and I said Steve Martin. He goes, "Who's that?"
Wow.
And I almost left.
You must have right to sprint.
I asked for a different salesperson. I'm like, this kid doesn't know. How do you not know? And he goes, so I said a couple movies, and he was like, oh yeah. And I go, that's not even his good stuff.
Right.
I go on YouTube. So I'm telling everybody who's watching this, if somebody doesn't know who Steve Martin is, go to YouTube, watch old videos of him. They're incredible.
Right.
Yeah. So
when he was the wild and crazy guy on Saturday Night Live and playing the banjo, all those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, even before him being on Saturday Night Live,
right?
Yeah, he would walk out on the Tonight Show and just do off the wall crazy stuff.
Well, I think he started as a magician at like Disneyland or something.
Yep.
Yeah, he didn't start. He kind of found his way.
Most magicians don't transition very well.
It's a dead end career.
They don't. They're not real big at moving to comedy. There's some. There's a few magician comics that I've seen do well, but most of them, that's probably a genre of comedy that I'm not a huge fan of.
I can only think of is his name? The Amazing Jonathan.
No, he's incredible.
He's the only one I know, but he's like, he made it.
I know him from Vegas, and he's a really great guy, really funny. He did a seminar at our festival one year, spelled it out, the business to the young comics. He's an incredible guy. There's him, there's Matt King, who is in Vegas, who does the Matt King Magic Show comedy, incredible. There's many, many, many magician comics that are incredibly funny. And there's also a lot that are not.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. We don't want to name any bad magician comics.
Yeah. Let's leave it with me saying bad things.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up our interview with you. Once again, Joe's the the owner of the World Series of Comedy. We're going to have your information on there of how to have people go and check it out. It's a great way to kind of get back into comedy with COVID and people being kind of shuttered in their homes for the last year and a half or so. And this is a great way to kind of whet your appetite to see it online and then get back out in there in the comedy clubs and see some of these comedians live.
Yeah, you can lose weight watching comedy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well known.
It's not true.
So thank you again, Joe, for coming on. We appreciate it. And love to have you out on again sometime and look forward to that.
Yeah, I could ask you.
Never going to happen.
We got things to do today.
What
You
was
said
that?
it'll never happen? You said it'll
Yeah.
never happen?
Never happened. No, I had a great time. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, thank you.
Thank you.